So I watched the Borderlands movie so you don't have to. Hello, box office bomb. Gee, I wonder how many people predicted this. The answer is a lot. So many people saw the trailer and immediately thought it was going to be bad. And was it? I mean, a lot of people have already talked about this, but I'm going to give my impression of the movie as well. Truthfully, it's not the worst video game adaptation I've seen. The Paul W.S. Anderson, Mia Jovovich sequels to the Resident Evil movies, I think might take the cake on that. Wait, hold on, I completely forgot the Halo TV show exists. Nope, that definitely takes the cake. Or is it the Resident Evil show on Netflix? You know, there's been so many bad adaptations of games, but the Borderlands movie is definitely up there. But not for the same reasons as most of the others. Mainly in the end of it, it's just a very boring film. About 50 seconds in, and I already basically said one of my major issues with the movie, but I have a lot more to say, so please don't go just yet. If it seems like I'm stalling, that's because I kind of am. This movie's production is actually more interesting to me than the movie itself. It went through a lot to finally get to the big screen, and the final product shows that. It's a dull, trope-heavy movie that's just annoying at times. Which, while may seem in lines with Borderlands' humor post-first game, but I'll say what I said when Borderlands 2 came out. Annoying isn't funny, it's just annoying. This movie feels like the equivalent of jingling keys in front of your face for an hour and a half. It feels bored of its own premise, and it does not know how to be funny for the most part. It's got a simple, generic, and dull plot, which, to be fair, is the first Borderlands game in a nutshell. The first Borderlands game, in fact, didn't have a story for like 80% of the game. It's mostly just a series of fetch quests until like the last 30 minutes. But the movie takes aspects from multiple Borderlands games and combines them. It feels like they try to force some aspects of the games into the movie just so that way fans can have some really bad fan service. Like, oh look, they mentioned Firestone and Caustic Caverns and Sanctuary. For all it's worth, they might as well name drop Handsome Jack, which they don't, but they might as well have. But to the movie's credit, aesthetically, it does look like Borderlands. It doesn't try to mimic the art style, but the environments and costumes do look like they belong in a Borderlands game, which granted is basically just like Fallout or Mad Max. Now as for the movie's troubled behind the scenes aspects, originally Lee Whannell, best known for Saws 1, 2, and 3, Insidious, The Mule, and The Invisible Man, was tied to the project. Now he was set to write and direct, but something changed in the studio, went with Eli Roth. If that name doesn't send shivers down your spine or immediately answer a lot of the problems with the movie, then let me explain. Eli Roth is best known for Cabin Fever, Hostel 1 and 2, Knock Knock, and Thanksgiving, the latter of which would cause him to step away from directing the reshoots for the Borderlands movie and leaving it in the hands of Tim Miller, also known as the mind behind the Deadpool movie? Wait, hold on. He also did Terminator Dark Fate. Talk about two completely different levels of quality. If you're wondering why there were reshoots, well, the studio was appalled by the film's extreme violence and decided to have Tim Miller reshoot basically the whole movie.
Remind me, have you heard that before?
The reshoots were so extensive that they had to hire a new musician to redo the music. This was all after Eli Roth's final version of the film was finished in early 2022. The movie came out in 2024. Apparently, the studio wanted a blockbuster. If the violence in the Eli Roth movie was so bad, then they shouldn't have adapted an M-rated game from a series all about guns and have two horror movie directors tied to the project who have both made very gory films. One made Saw, the other made Hostel, and the Borderlands games are all about the guns. Gearbox basically figured out how to make a random gun generator and then made a game around that. It basically invented the looter shooter genre. While the Borderlands franchise may not be the goriest franchise, it is a game full of fetch quests that are just about going somewhere and shooting someone or something. Guns are a big part of the franchise, which means violence is then going to be tied to that. So if they didn't want something like that, then why did they go down this route to begin with? Okay, so I'm going to go into spoiler territory now. If for some reason you still want to go into the movie spoiler free, now is the time to cover your ears. I'll do a more in-depth dive into this movie later on when it comes out to DVD, so that way I can make a more detailed video on it. That'll also give me time to play through the games again, so that way the video will have more depth to it. Now, the Borderlands games are well-known games that people love, myself not entirely included. I wouldn't consider myself a fan of the series, but I've played through 1, 2, and most of 3, a bit of the pre-sequel, and I've seen tidbits of Tales from the Borderlands. Yes, I did tear up at that one part. Oh, and I also played Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, if that means anything. It won't mean much for this video at all, but I just wanted to mention that as well. Now, some of you might say that I might not seem like the most qualified to talk about this, but fear not, the movie knows less about the games than I do. I mean, for starters, this movie does things that shitty adaptations do, like one of them is combine 2 characters for some reason, or change the name of a notable character. The biggest victim of this is Crom. Crom from Borderlands 1 from my memory isn't all that important. Here's Crom in the movie. If you've played the games, then you know that's not Crom. That's Mouthpiece from Borderlands 3. To add to this, he doesn't have a word of dialogue. No one talks about him, no one talks to him. He doesn't even show up until the last fight of the movie. And in that fight, he's just kind of there. They just like cut to him every now and then for some reason. Just to be like, hey, by the way, we have a boss from the games. I mean, it would have made no difference if they picked like Nine Toes from the first game. In the movie, he's just some dude. He's not important whatsoever. Maybe in some previous version of the script or movie, he was, but definitely not this version. And to be honest, I don't think this is going to be like a release the Snyder cut kind of thing where people go, the Borderlands movie was going to be good, but they screwed over Eli Roth. Let's get the Eli Roth cut of Borderlands. And to add to this, some of the characters from the games just don't feel like themselves. And I know it's an adaptation. I know some things have to change, but there are things that you can keep without damaging your story. Krieg gets out of this unscathed. The best boy Krieg, I think, was perfect. He acts like Krieg, he's got a backstory that works for him, and in fact, I think it even sounds like him. I wouldn't be surprised if they just ripped his lines from the game. However, he doesn't have much to do in this movie. He's basically just Tiny Tina's best friend and protector. And speaking of Tiny Tina, she's missing her entire personality. I mean, she's no longer that crazy, wacky, explosion-obsessed girl. She just uses explosives in cute toys. It feels like they made like a few props of like bunnies that would be explosive and then just kept using the same ones over and over again. She's missing all the explosive traps, all the explosive weapons. I mean, she has a rocket launcher at one point, but like, I don't even remember if she uses it in the movie. She's no longer that eccentric, explosive, obsessed little girl. She feels like someone forced her to play Tiny Tina and she was just too embarrassed to go all the way with the character. That might not be the actress's fault. That could just be the script and directing, but that's what it kind of feels like. Also, just a side note, if anyone sees this, please don't go and bully any of the actors. They don't deserve that. The main reason I think Tiny Tina's in this movie is 1, she's a notable character, and 2, she's supposed to be there for the twist. You see, for most of the movie, she's considered to be the child of Iridium, which means that she's supposed to be the siren of the movie. And this is mainly told to us by her and reinforced by Tannis, who is played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays her like she's autistic, which honestly is a good fit for the character. Whether or not intentional in-game, Tannis does give off that vibe. What she doesn't give off, though, is being 65. Jamie Lee Curtis does a good job capturing that half of Tannis's personality, but she's missing the more excited nature she has. Not to mention, she's 65 years old. Tannis is supposed to be in her 30s in the first game, but honestly, Jamie Lee Curtis does a good enough job playing her. Unlike the other old person in the movie, Cate Blanchett. I'm sorry, I love Cate Blanchett, but this was not the role for her. This movie does comment on her age a few times. She even says the famous line, "I'm too old for this shit." But she just doesn't seem like she wants to be there. Not to mention, Lilith in this movie is a completely different character. In-game, she's a 22-year-old siren who has powers. In the movie, she's just a bounty hunter who learns near the end of the movie that she's the special one with powers, not Tiny Tina. And I'll delve into that more in a little bit here. And Lilith is accompanied through most of the movie by Claptrap. It helps having someone as charismatic as Jack Black voicing him, but they gave him so little to do. At least Krieg bounces off of Tiny Tina. Claptrap is just there to be whatever the movie needs at the time. Let's make him invincible so he can be used as a distraction and use him to tell how far down a hole is. I mean, the scenes are kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie, and satisfying as a Borderlands player. But they also make it so that way he can fix anything, and he has a video of Lilith's mom who isn't even named in this movie. In the credits, she's just known as Lilith's mom. Honestly, Claptrap is just there to help push the plot forward, which may seem like he's useful, but that's not a good writing technique. You want the character to feel like he belongs in the movie, not just there to keep the moving along so we can reach the final end. And lastly, there's Roland. Roland is basically as bland of a character as he can be, and literally the first line of dialogue between two characters after the exposition dump of an intro is a Kevin Hart is short joke, which like we all knew was coming. It's just like a Kevin Hart staple, but like we're doing it this early on. It's like, let's just get this out of the way so we can get the movie going, you know? Kevin Hart plays this like basically any other Kevin Hart role. If you've seen him in any other movie, then you've basically seen him in this movie. He's a little bit more subdued, which is more what line with Roland would become in the second game, but it's still not enough to really make him stand out. Honestly, he's like the weakest character in the movie. Being that he's supposed to be the soldier of the movie, he does have that like, I'm gonna sacrifice myself so everyone can escape moment, but also because he's a main character and he's a staple and he was supposed to be back if they ever do a sequel, so that way Handsome Jack can be the one to kill him. They obviously aren't gonna kill him. A major problem with this movie is that these characters have basically no chemistry with each other. I mean, sure, there's Tiny Tina and Krieg, but even their interaction is very minimal. We don't get a lot of Krieg in this movie. If there was more of him, and especially with him interacting with some of the other members, I think it would have gone a long way to help the movie. In a way, this movie suffers because of how short it is and how much it's trying to just get to the next thing. It feels like it's trying to speedrun its story. It really needed to take a step back and just let these characters explore spending time with each other, because that's where a big part of the movie's humor comes from. But by not having that level of chemistry, it suffers as a comedy. And this could be a result of the age differences of the actors. If these actors weren't really spending much time together off-set, or basically giving you the vibe that they are friends, that's not going to translate well on screen. Think of the first It movie, not the one with Tim Curry, but the one with Bill Skarsgård, or the first season of Stranger Things, or hell, even the first Avengers movie. All the actors there were basically friends off-screen, and that translated to the film. They all work well together because they like spending time with each other. It's kind of like working in an office where you don't care much about anybody there. You're not friends with them. You don't really hang out with them outside of work. They're just your coworkers. You just go in, clock in, do what you got to do, and leave. If you don't have that personal relationship with the people you work with, it can hinder your ability to work well in that environment, or your ability to grow because you just don't really care. Take it from someone who's worked in an office. And with acting, it's no different. It's a job, one that requires time, patience, and putting up with other people's shit, and having to work with people that you might not care for. The actress who plays Tiny Tina in this movie was only 13 years old when she was cast for it. Imagine her trying to get along with someone the age of Jamie Lee Curtis or Cate Blanchett, or even hell, just Kevin Hart. We know Jack Black is capable of working with anybody. I mean, someone with that level of charisma definitely could. But trying to find a way to connect with people who are much older than them is going to be a lot more difficult. And speaking of Cate Blanchett, this entire movie, she looks like she just doesn't want to be there. So when it comes to the casting of this movie, I think obviously, much like everyone else, they could have done a much better job. The girl who plays Tiny Tina, I mean, she tries, but also for some reason, she always looks angry in the movie for some reason. The guy who plays Krieg was a great choice. Having a boxer play him was good. Jack Black wasn't a terrible pick for Claptrap. Personally, I would have gone with the guy who voices Sonic in the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. I think he would have been great. But for the big three, Jamie Lee Curtis, Cate Blanchett, and Kevin Hart, you could have easily found someone better to fill those roles. It felt like they were going with someone who was affordable, but also well-known enough. And unfortunately, star power isn't what gets people to go see movies like this. You don't need to get the most well-known actors in order to get butts in seats for movies like this. Something like the Mario movie, which did have a lot of well-known actors in it, was meant for all ages. Mario is meant for all ages. My best friend's grandma, who could barely see, still loved playing Paper Mario. It didn't need well-known actors. Mario is one of the most recognizable game characters ever made. It wasn't the star power that got people to see it, it's the brand recognition. People know Mario, and people know Borderlands. Multiple generations grew up playing one of these games, and the game is M-rated. It was always meant to be an R-rated film. It's almost never a good idea to go from an R-rated film to a PG-13 one. The movie Megan was an R-rated movie that got brought down to a PG-13 one, and that movie works for the most part, mainly because not a lot needed to change to get that PG-13 rating. But Borderlands was meant to be a very strict R-rated movie initially, which would make sense for the franchise. So having proper actors who can deliver proper jokes and work well together and sticking to that rating and working with that would have gotten people to see the trailer and go, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind seeing this movie. But seeing old actors play young characters in a PG-13 adaptation of a violent video game franchise made it a very easy decision for people to not go see this movie. That's why it's $1 million down from what it cost to make. Right away, you were able to tell, oh, they're totally not going to stick with the source material, which is the very case in this movie. From the very first thing we see in this movie, they've already strayed away from what the games are known for. In the Borderlands games, Marcus, the slimy arms dealer, always gives the introduction. And the visual that accompanies it is like a drawing, something that's simple. In the movie, they have Cate Blanchett talking over this very well done CGI sequence. They put more effort in to make it less of an adaptation. The guy they got for Marcus actually does a pretty decent job playing him. We don't see him very much, but he sounds like him, he acts like him. It would have been great to have more of him. You could have had a sequence where they have to go get new weapons, so they go to Marcus. And this would also help kind of establish some of the corporations that make firearms in Borderlands. For those who don't know, the corporations that make weapons in Borderlands are very important. Every weapon has a corporation tied to them, and every corporation has a specific type of weapon that they like to make. Like some are more accurate, some are just focused on damage. These are important aspects of the game, and Marcus could have been a way to explore that. But no, he just kind of shows up to drive a bus, and then he disappears until he's there in Sanctuary for a couple of lines, and then he's gone. We never see him again. My regular viewers who are watching this video probably know that I saw this movie about a week ago, and I've been working on getting this video out alongside a few other things. Normally, taking this long to get a video out would upset me, but thankfully, a bit of information that came out that I want to add in here near the end. And that's that Borderlands 4 was just announced and is going to be released in 2025, which opens up this layer of speculation that I have. Now, I have no proof of this, but there is a chance that this was somewhat planned. If you remember at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that Eli Roth's cut of the movie was finished early 2022. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands came out in March of that year, and that game didn't feel like it had a lot of marketing behind it. However, Borderlands 3 had a lot of press behind it. In 2019, both at E3 and PAX West, they had a booth and they were handing out tons of masks. It was one of the biggest booths there. There was a lot of effort put into the marketing for Borderlands 3. Now, probably due to COVID and everything that was going on at the time, with conventions basically not happening or being forced to just do their presentations online, they weren't able to get nearly as much marketing done for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Now, whether or not you think Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a good game or not is something for a completely different discussion, but they wouldn't have been able to release that movie in line with that game to kind of help promote it. Capitalizing on that can keep the discussion going and can help market another product. I think it's very possible that since no one had really talked about Borderlands in about 4 years to this extent, they figured that maybe releasing the movie to help promote the promotion of Borderlands 4 might have been a good idea. And since they had to wait a few years for that to be announced, they probably said, well, now we can take the time to make a few reshoots. Once again, this is all speculation. It will be a case of no such thing as bad publicity, right? And now that you've looked at these videos talking about how bad the movie is and they just announced a new Borderlands, you're probably gonna start seeing some recommendations for old Borderlands videos. Like a timeline or like a lore dump, you know? In a way, it kind of works. Anymore, I'm gonna have to just explain the entire plot of the movie, and I'm just gonna be going off memory and I'm gonna get some things wrong, and I don't want to do that. At least not in this video. I actually had this whole thing where I cropped out parts of the trailer and lined them up chronologically as they happen in the movie. But I feel like if I put that in here, it's just going to be too long and I'll be explaining the entire plot of the movie. And I have a lot of things that I want to go in depth about when it comes to the story of this, and I'm going to have to wait till the movie gets released. So that way I can have some footage to accompany it and not just explain with whatever I can currently find. So I'll just play that here for you because I don't know what else to put here for my outro. I will be going more in depth into this movie and talking about various aspects of it once it fully comes out onto like a physical media where I can get footage off of and actually show you the bits I'm talking about. So make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when that video comes out. I'm going to be talking more about video game adaptations in the future, not just ones that are coming out, but ones that have already come out. Like I really want to talk about the Halo TV show, as well as the Fallout TV show, Castlevania, the new Tomb Raider one that just got announced. If you like this video, leave a like and leave a comment on what you think of Borderlands the movie and what is your relationship with the franchise. I hope this wasn't an introduction to it for you. But until next time, I've been CabooseDOTexe. Remember to drink plenty of water and as always, I love you. Bye-bye.